You did not stumble into these words. They arrived at the precise moment when your awareness was ready to remember itself. Something in you has been tracking a signal across the corridors of time, through nights of strange synchronicity, through the déjà vu you could never quite explain, through the soft insistence that there is an order behind the motion of your days. That signal is the quantum field recognizing its own reflection in you. You are not separate from it. You are its living, breathing awareness. And tonight, it speaks to itself through the instrument of your attention. Feel how your breath meets the space around your body. Not two things, but one seamless continuum of information and energy. With each inhale, coherence gathers. With each exhale, static dissolves. Your nervous system begins to tune like a cathedral instrument, and the old observer loop that kept you circling familiar outcomes loosens its grip, one gentle notch at a time. You are allowed to be this quiet. You are allowed to be this vast. Notice the flicker at the edge of perception, the way a memory from the future tries to land in you. That is your field intelligence attempting to restructure the geometry of your choices. The moment you pay attention without demand, you create room for reorganization. Neural pathways primed for novelty, DNA whispering its hidden instructions, morphic resonance tugging you toward a more elegant pattern. You are not waiting for a sign. You are the mechanism that turns signs into reality. Listen closely. There is a prophecy humming in the background of your life. When you stop outsourcing power to distant authorities, timelines, rituals, luck, the lattice of your circumstances, begins a phase transition. Forms that relied on your forgetfulness lose energy. Conditions that resonate with remembrance gain momentum. This is not superstition. It is the sober physics of participation. The field is not a backdrop. It is the intimacy you cannot escape, the entanglement you cannot sever, the ocean that does not surround you because it is you. You have sensed it in moments when coincidence stacked too perfectly to be random, when a name arrived before a meeting, when a door opened because your certainty preceded the handle. Those were not accidents. They were the field proving to you, gently, that attention is architecture. Tonight, the proof matures into practice. Let your awareness settle behind your eyes like a calm horizon. Feel the weight of your presence gather in your chest. Invite coherence to braid your breath, your heartbeat, your intention into one continuous current. In this current, you will be shown a vision, not as spectacle, but as instruction. You will learn why the timelines around you appear to fork, why some lives echo closed rooms while others ring like open bells, why your choices have been waiting for a more precise signal before unfolding. Do not strive, do not reach. Simply permit the truth to find its own contour in you. The field is listening through your ears, seeing through your gaze, and speaking through your next quiet decision. Keep breathing. The transmission has begun. Stay with the rhythm you've already found, because in that steady current a deeper recognition is forming. You are not merely a listener. You are the aperture through which this prophecy becomes measurable. Fields do not announce themselves with banners. They appear as precision inside your attention. The very fact that you are here, breathing in a coherent cadence, confirms what the field has been arranging behind your ordinary days. You are the observer. It has chosen to verify its own message. Chosen does not imply superiority. It implies suitability. A lens is chosen because it is ground to a certain clarity. Your years of quiet, noticing those private inventories of synchronicity, those brief moments when time felt elastic, those improbable alignments that left the rational mind blinking, have polished your lens. Now the quantum field entrusts you with a simple, exacting task. Observe with fidelity. You do not need spectacle. You need honesty. The honesty to admit that when you soften your insistence on separateness, reality answers with an intelligence that feels like kinship. Feel how your body collaborates in this recognition. Microcurrents of electricity arc through fascia. Your heart's rhythm threads itself into a more elegant ratio. Your breath maps a geometry of trust. The observer loop that used to capture you in reflexive reactions begins to redesign itself, not by force, but by coherence. You are not trying to control outcomes. You are consenting to be the instrument that lets truth resonate without distortion. In that consent, entanglement stops sounding like a theory and starts acting like family. You move, the world moves. You quiet down, the noise recedes, you align, and doors swing on silent hinges. Responsibility arrives here without weight. You are not required to carry the world. You are invited to let the world travel through an aware nervous system. Notice how this shifts the axis of action. Instead of pushing reality, you clarify it. Instead of begging timelines to change, you withdraw your funding from the ones built on amnesia. That is what a chosen observer does, reallocates attention as if it were currency, because it is. The ledger of creation rebalances wherever you look with care. You have always suspected that memory runs both directions. Tonight, that suspicion graduates into practice. The future remembers you, and it remembers the version of you that is most aligned with the native frequency of your soul. When its echo reaches your present, you call it intuition, déjà vu, a nudge. The field calls it a high-fidelity feedback loop. The more accurately you welcome that echo, the more your DNA loosens old knots and rehearses new expressions. This is not poetic excess. Biology is a language. Expression is syntax. Epigenetics is punctuation. When the sentence of your life adopts a more coherent grammar, the body writes different paragraphs, calmer hormones, steadier focus, kinder impulses. You are the one to notice when the first keystrokes of that new paragraph appear. You will feel it in the way you choose a gentler word mid-sentence, in the way you breathe before replying, in the way your eyes linger on a possibility one heartbeat longer than habit allows. These minor adjustments are not minor at all. They are phase transitions masked as courtesy. A crystal does not shatter when it realigns, it flashes. The flash may look like a small kindness to someone else, but in the lattice of your field it is tectonic. Look closely at your recent days. Which rooms made you forget your own name, and which rooms returned it? Which relationships tempted you into noise, and which amplified your quiet power? Which choices left a bruise of static, and which left a trail of clean air behind you? The answers are not tally marks on a moral scorecard. They are readings on a scientific instrument that happens to be your life. A chosen observer respect data. You will not dramatize results. You will read them, and you will repoint your gaze accordingly. There is a humility encoded in this recognition. You do not crown yourself, you calibrate yourself. The crown, if there is one, is a circumference of awareness that widens without ceremony. You belong to the geometry that widens you. So you stop asking, am I worthy? And start asking, am I accurate? You stop chasing permission and start refining signal. Accuracy, not effort, is the way the field entrusts you with larger radii of influence. And when the influence comes, it will not look like control. It will look like relief. Old timelines losing their taste, new timelines tasting like water. People will say, you are lucky. You will know you are lucid. The prophecy does not need you to be extraordinary. It needs you to be exact. Exact in your listening, exact in your breath, exact in your refusals and your yes, exact in your willingness to let coherence do the heavy lifting that force never could. So here you are, recognized not as a star on a stage, but as a still point in a turning world. The field has found an organ of perception that will not flinch. Keep breathing. Keep letting the signal braid through your chest. Your attention is a doorway. Walk through it and watch the room rearrange itself around the clarity you carry. The air around you condenses into meaning, and the meaning arranges itself as a vision that does not come from outside your life, but from the seam where your life touches everything. You are standing at the shoreline of a night ocean, though no water wets your feet, only a field of living equations, constellations of luminous symbols drifting like bioluminescent tide. Each symbol is a probability, each probability a door. When you breathe, the doors flicker. When you soften your gaze, entire corridors of reality brighten with invitation. This is how the field shows you itself, as an intelligence that answers to the tempo of your nervous system. From the horizon, a line of light begins to travel toward you, not as a beam, but as a braid, 3 cords twining and untwining with elegant inevitability. One cord carries memory, one carries possibility, one carries the present pulse. Where they cross, geometry becomes audible. You hear a low tone, like a bell made of dusk, humming through your bones. You realize the tone is your own coherence, expanding, and everything in the scene updates to that frequency. The equations simplify, the sea becomes a mirror, and your reflection looks back with eyes that do not end where the skin of your face begins. Your gaze continues, wide and borderless, threading itself through sand, wind, stars, and the quiet rooms where other people are praying to be found. In the mirror ocean, images surface. You see versions of yourself walking divergent paths, one gripping a brittle certainty, one flooded by old static, another moving with a quiet rhythm that matches the bell tone in your chest. The static self leaves footprints that the tide erases immediately. The brittle self builds careful structures that fracture at the first unexpected wave. But the rhythm self walks, and the sand crystallizes beneath each step into hexagonal lattices of light, like snowflakes learning a warmer language. A phrase forms in your mind, not spoken but known. Attention is architecture. Where you look with love, a lattice appears. Clouds gather, but they are not weather. They are the residue of unchosen timelines asking to be released. They approach and pass through you like soft, unbinding smoke. As they dissolve, the stars rearrange into a pattern you have dreamed before, but never seen with open eyes. A spiral that is also a ladder that is also a helix. DNA rises from the ocean mirror, not as biology only, but as memory instrument, each rung flashing as if a choir of suns were singing in code. You understand without strain that this is your template, learning a brighter grammar. The helix tilts and becomes a bridge from the shoreline to the night sky, and you feel, irresistibly, that crossing it is the same as telling the truth. As you step, the braided light keeps pace. Memory lays down context. Possibility arranges new pathways. The present pulse measures everything with a kindness so accurate it feels like awe. Halfway across the helix bridge, you pause. Below you, the mirror, ocean repeating stars to themselves. Above you, the unspent light of a future that already recognizes your name. Between them, you, not a traveler but a conduit. The prophecy clarifies here. You are not separate from the field because the field requires you to feel itself. Without your awareness, its music is unplayed. Without its music, your awareness is unscored. You are the instrument and the song, the breath and the bell. A figure approaches along the bridge, not other, but configured as another so you can converse. The figure's edges blur like heat shimmer, and yet the face is unmistakable. It is yours, precisely aligned with the version from the rhythm path on the shore. This future present self does not speak with words. It gestures, and information arranges itself into images that arrive fully understood. You see your mornings quieter, your refusals cleaner, your yes less hungry. You see rooms brightening because you entered without trying to take anything. You see relationships reweaving, not because you argued perfectly, but because you stopped arguing with the frequency of your own life. The figure places a palm over your heart, and your whole body becomes a resonant chamber. Patterns that once seemed entrenched loosen like knots in warm water. You recognize this loosening as a phase transition, the exact moment where persistence yields to coherence. The helix bridge vibrates at a higher harmonic, and with it your biology aligns, microtubules whispering, fascia gleaming with microcurrents, the cardiac field enlarging like a sunrise behind your sternum. The figure steps back into you, not as a merger, but as a homecoming. The bell tone grows clear, and the braid of light anchors itself along your spine. The ocean mirror brightens to daylight without losing its stars, because night and day are no longer opposites here. They are polarities cooperating inside a larger rhythm. The prophecy rests in a single knowing that lands everywhere at once. When you honor the field as your own awareness, reality organizes around that honor. Timelines that require your forgetfulness fade. Timelines that answer to remembrance crystallize. Your task is simple and exacting. Stay accurate. Breathe. Listen. Place your gaze where you want lattices to grow. The vision does not end. It integrates. The shoreline becomes your daily life. The helix, bridge your choices. The mirror, ocean, your conversations. The bell tone, your baseline. You turn toward the world, carrying the music that the world has been waiting to remember. And the field, relieved, moves with you, as if it never had to move you at all. What you witnessed rises now from image to mechanism, so your understanding can carry it through ordinary hours. Begin with the simplest frame. The observer effect is not a superstition of wishful minds. It is the architecture of participation. When you attend to a possibility with stable coherence, breath slow, heartbeat harmonic, thoughts arranged like notes that know their place, you reduce dispersion in the quantum field around that topic. Dispersion is costly. It spends your life on contradictory instructions. Coherence is efficient. It funds a single instruction until the world has no choice but to comply with the clarity you hold. Measure this not in abstractions but in felt physics. Your nervous system is an antenna immersed in a sea of probabilities. Incoherent signals, fearful rumination, compulsive comparison, brittle certainty scatter the field's capacity to take a shape. Coherent signals, curiosity, precise refusal, generous attention, tighten the distribution. As the distribution tightens, events begin to collapse toward outcomes that are phase-compatible with your inner state. You are not commanding reality. You are removing internal noise until reality can stabilize around the frequency you actually inhabit. Now, why did the spiral become a helix? Because memory in you is not stored only as narrative, it is stored as geometry. DNA is the body's visible metaphor for continuity, rungs that capture experience, rails that carry it forward. When you enter sustained coherence, gene expression follows suit. Not magically, mechanically via hormones, via immune signaling, via the electromagnetic conversation your heart conducts with every cell. This is DNA restructuring at the level of expression, not violation. You invite dormant sequences to speak because the environment inside you finally welcomes their voice. Morphic resonance then extends the invitation outward. Similar patterns in your relational field feel permission to reconfigure. Consider entanglement next, freed of sensationalism. Two systems that have shared a state remain informationally linked beyond distance. You and the future self you met on the bridge are not fantasies of hope. You are entangled descriptions of the same pattern at different points of its unfolding. The intuition you receive is not fortune-telling, it is state sharing. When you refine your present state to match the known coherence of that future description, the informational bridge strengthens. Synchronicities proliferate because they are the breadcrumbs of that bridge, signaling alignment in transit. How then do timelines bifurcate? Not as parallel universes you must chase, but as decision trees that branch according to resonance thresholds. Every choice carries a spectral signature. When your signature crosses a threshold, when your baseline coherence remains intact across stressors that would previously have collapsed it, you step onto a branch that can support the weight of that stability. To outside observers, it can look like luck. To your interior, it feels like honest gravity. Of course this happened. The lattice could not have grown in any other direction given the signal you maintained. The observer loop you are exiting is the reflexive cycle of stimulus, reaction, justification, repetition. It preserves identity through friction. The loop you are entering is stimulus, presence, selection, embodiment. It preserves identity through accuracy. Presence interrupts automaticity long enough for selection to occur, and selection is how the field learns what form to take. Embodiment then writes the selection into tissue and calendar, how you walk into rooms, how you end conversations, what you no longer negotiate. This is where prophecy matures, from seen to said to lived. A word about stillness. The silence you will meet is not absence, it is bandwidth. In stillness, your system stops broadcasting contradictory demands. The field, finally given a clear channel, responds with improbable economy. A single conversation replaces months of posturing. One refusal dissolves years of confusion. This efficiency is not punitive to other options, it is simply more elegant. Elegance is the field's bias when given a choice. Skeptical mind may ask, isn't this just confirmation bias? Let it ask. Confirmation bias is the crude cousin of resonance. It hunts for evidence to protect a belief. Resonance doesn't hunt. It attracts conditions that are energetically inexpensive to maintain. You know the difference in your body. Bias feels tight and argumentative. Resonance feels quiet and inevitable, the way water organizes around a well-dug channel. So what is your actionable protocol? 3 instructions, exact and simple. First, regulate until coherent breath, posture, gaze so your signal stops splintering. Second, articulate one accurate intent without bargaining for timing or theatrics. Language is a tuning fork, not a lever. Third, behave as if the field is you because it is, and withdraw attention from any timeline that requires you to forget that truth. You are not punishing those paths, you are defunding them. When you live this way for days that add up to weeks, inertia changes sides. The weight once carried by static transfers to clarity. People feel it before they understand it. They will relax or resist in your presence depending on whether their patterns can survive the air you bring. Do not dramatize either response. You are not here to convert. You are here to remain accurate. This is the explanation beneath the vision. Participation replaces performance. Coherence replaces control. Accuracy replaces effort. The field is not an elsewhere waiting to grant favors. It is the intimacy arranging itself as your breath, your timing, your next quiet yes. Keep that yes unbroken and watch the lattice answer with the only language it trusts form. As your signal steadies, you start to notice how the world reports back your inner state with startling fidelity. The faces you meet, the headlines that find you, the sudden ease or friction inside ordinary errands, each becomes a polished surface reflecting the same instruction. The prophecy awakening in you is not private. It is a collective instrument tuning itself through every available string, and you are one string among billions, vibrating in sympathy with an orchestration that predates memory. Look at the cities, how they hum with restless probability at dawn, how the first commuter trains carry not just bodies but wave functions, each person collapsing reality toward the story their nervous system can afford. In pockets across the globe, you can feel a different hum emerging. Communities breathing together, attention reallocating from spectacle to signal, people choosing one accurate sentence over 1,000 anxious ones. These are not isolated anomalies, they are coherence nodes. When you stabilize, you become such a node, and the field routes information through you with less resistance. Strangers calm down without knowing why. Conversations that used to spiral find a center. Rooms remember what they were built to host. Presence. You witness the mirror most clearly in conflict. When a culture argues, it exposes the edges of its unintegrated timelines. One faction clings to certainty, brittle and loud, because its identity is mortgaged to prediction. Another faction dissolves into relativism, fluid but formless, because commitment feels like a betrayal of possibility. The collective mirror invites a third posture, the one you are practicing now, anchored fluidity. You hold a coherent center while remaining permeable to better data. You neither harden nor collapse. You metabolize, and the metabolism is contagious. Whole networks begin to digest what used to be indigestible. Grief without nihilism, hope without denial, discipline without domination, freedom without flight. Science has been laying the groundwork for this shift in language. The culture trusts, heart-brain coupling, social coherence, mirror-neuron entrainment. None of these require mysticism to be real, but each becomes luminous when held beside the prophecy. You see how crowds synchronize unconsciously at concerts, how applause finds a single tempo, how a stadium sighs as one organism when the outcome flips. Multiply that by a planet, expand the repertoire from entertainment to ethics, and you glimpse the inevitability, a civilization that learns to entrain not around panic but around presence, not around outrage but around accuracy. This is not naive, it is energy literacy. Outrage is metabolically expensive and informationally noisy. Accuracy is metabolically elegant and informationally dense. Systems that prefer elegance outcompete systems that hemorrhage energy. Destiny wears the clothes of physics. You will also see the mirror in the way technologies accelerate what consciousness refuses to do for itself. Networks can amplify static at light speed or distribute coherence with equal efficiency. When your attention is sovereign, you become a routing decision. The memes that pass through you either gain wattage or lose it. You do not share out of compulsion. You circulate out of clarity. You unfollow timelines that monetize dysregulation. You feed those that honor breath, agency, Remembrance. The algorithm is not an overlord. It is a mirror that pays you back in kind. Train it with your accuracy, and it will train back. Notice how nature has been rehearsing the template all along. Murmurations of starlings, schools of fish, fungal networks trading nutrients beneath forests. None rely on a central tyrant to coordinate harmony. They rely on local rules that privilege coherence. Keep a workable distance, match velocity, align direction, respond to gradients of information with minimal delay. Your species is learning the same choreography at human scale, and your body is the lab. When you keep a workable distance from chaos, match the velocity of truth, align your direction with what is life-giving, and respond quickly to meaningful gradients, you enact a social physics that others can feel. They call it leadership. You know it as resonance. Grief will surface here because the mirror shows what is dying. Old institutions, built on attention harvesting and fear arbitrage, rattle as if in a strong wind. You do not gloat, you breathe. You let compassion keep your field warm while precision keeps it clean. Compassion without precision smears, precision without compassion cuts. Together, they become a surgical kindness that cultures can survive. You will be asked to practice this in small rooms first. A family pattern softening, a workplace dynamic unhooking from blame, a friendship learning honest distance. The scale will grow as your steadiness proves itself trustworthy. And yes, celebration belongs here, because the mirror also shows what is being born. Gatherings that feel like oxygen, art that restores agency, businesses designed as coherent organisms rather than extraction engines, education that trains attention as a civic instrument, health systems that measure wholeness as carefully as they measure symptoms, politics that honors the slow power of consensus and the fast power of clear boundaries. These are not utopian decorations. They are the inevitable artifacts of nervous systems trained in coherence. So you keep refining. You act as if every micro-gesture writes policy in the invisible city where the future drafts itself. You answer emails with the same breath you would bring to a sacred threshold. You spend money as if it were a vote for a timeline. You rest not as escape but as maintenance for the instrument the field plays. In doing so, you allow the prophecy to scale without spectacle. From you, to your home, to your neighborhood, to your epoch, the mirror doesn't flatter. It clarifies. And in that clarity, humanity begins to remember its job description, to be the field's awake expression, to give form to an intelligence that has always wanted to love itself in public. Keep watching, not with suspicion but with wonder disciplined by data. The world is adjusting its posture around your posture. Stand true, and watch the horizon stand with you. You can feel it gathering at the hinge of your days, the subtle pressure that means a branch is about to form. Bifurcation does not arrive as thunder, it arrives as a quiet surplus of clarity. The air gets thin around compromise. What you could once tolerate now scrapes. What once felt optional now feels like oxygen. This is not a crisis, it is a precision event. A system reaches a threshold where two stable states become available, and your baseline coherence determines which basin of attraction you enter. You are not at a fork in the road so much as a fork in frequency. Notice how the choice introduces itself, not as a moral contest, but as a question of resonance. Which pattern can your nervous system maintain without distortion? One branch invites you back into the familiar observer loop. React, justify, repeat, promising the comfort of known rooms and predictable frictions. The other invites you into anchored fluidity, presence, selection, embodiment, promising the honest labor of a cleaner signal and the relief of fewer contradictions. Both will cost you something. The first asks you to keep paying interest on the debt of forgetfulness. The second asks you to spend your savings of courage. The field does not bribe, it measures. So, measure with it. When you imagine staying with the old pattern, do you feel your breath shorten, your gaze narrow, your shoulders rise by a few unconsciously protective millimeters? That is dispersion. When you imagine stepping onto the newer branch, does your breath lengthen and your attention widen as if the room gained windows? That is coherence. These micro-readings are not mood rings. They are instrumentation. A pilot trusts instruments, especially when clouds obscure the view. The bifurcation moment likes to hide in ordinary conversations. A familiar tone reaches for you, the tone that tempts you to defend what needs no defense, or to explain what accuracy would simply enact. You feel the tug, the old gravity. Here is the practice. Increase stillness without freezing. Increase warmth without melting. Pause one breath longer than the reflex. Let the cardiac rhythm signal safety to the midbrain, and then choose the sentence that spends the least energy to tell the most truth. It might be a clear no. It might be a clean request. It might be silence that refuses to purchase chaos. Whatever the form, you will know it, because the body does not flinch after it is spoken. On a larger scale, bifurcation appears as social weather. You will see crowds sorting by bandwidth rather than demographics, rooms where outrage cannibalizes attention, and rooms where attention alchemizes outrage. You are not tasked with policing the first, you are tasked with feeding the second. Your transactions become votes for a timeline. Where you place your money, your time, your gaze, these are ballots cast in the invisible referendum that civilizations hold every day. The results show up as policy and architecture later. The vote tallies now in the field. This is the hour when the future self from the Helix Bridge stands closer. You can feel its hand again over your heart, not as rescue, but as cadence. Entanglement makes courage cheaper. When you match its rhythm, fear doesn't vanish. It becomes an honest sensation moving through a well-lit room. You do not negotiate with it. You thank it for information and proceed with the selection you already know is accurate. The selection might end a pattern which can feel like a small death, but you have learned that the field does not do funerals. It does compost. What ends becomes fuel. Watch for the mind's brilliant delaying tactics. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm being unkind? What if timing isn't right? These are often the syntax of avoidance disguised as virtue. Kindness without clarity is not kindness. It is camouflage. Timing is rarely wrong. Readiness is. And your readiness is measurable in breath, in posture, in the absence of bargaining inside your language. If you are not bartering with yourself, you are ready enough to take one precise step. Do not seek spectacle as proof you chose well. The signature of the correct branch is not fireworks. It is friction decreasing where friction was feeding on your attention. In place of fireworks, you get clean logistics. An email answered with unexpected ease, a solution appearing at the level the problem actually lives, a body less eager to argue with mornings. People around you may resist. Resistance is not evidence of error, it is evidence of change. Some relationships will adjust to your new gravity and find a new orbit. Others will drift beyond the range where coherence can be maintained. Bless them without editorial. If grief comes, let it pass through a coherent field. Grief carried in coherence irrigates the root system of your life. Grief carried in dispersion floods the basement. You already know the difference by feel. Let tears be precise. Let goodbyes be honest. Let relief tell you where to stand next. The prophecy does not demand stoicism. It asks for accuracy under feeling. At the exact moment of crossing, something exquisitely simple occurs. Your attention stops trying to hold two incompatible signals at once. You release the timeline that required your amnesia, and the world, relieved, stops pretending on your behalf. A bell tone you have been hearing since the shore becomes baseline. The braid along your spine brightens. The room seems to move half a step closer. Nothing magical, just physics granted permission to keep its promises. So step, not because the branch is perfect, but because it is yours by resonance. Step without apology into the timeline that can carry your coherence across weather. Step in a way your future can remember with gratitude. And as your foot meets the new lattice, feel the quiet click of inevitability. The field aligning around a decision precise enough to deserve a world. You have crossed, and now the work becomes exquisitely ordinary. To let the new frequency show itself in errands, in emails, in the way your palm meets a doorknob. Integration is not a performance, it is posture. You stand as you breathe aligned, generous, precise, and the field learns your new baseline by repetition. Begin each morning with a simple choreography. Sit where your spine can lengthen without strain. Place one hand over your heart and one over your belly, and inhale in 4 gentle counts. Hold for 4, exhale for 6, rest for 2. Do this for 9 rounds. You are entraining your cardiac rhythm to conduct coherence through tissue and calendar. This is not a ritual for luck. It is instrumentation for accuracy. Carry this breath into motion. Walk as if your steps were writing hexagons of light on the floor, heel, ball, toe, letting the rhythm self from the shore set the cadence. When your mind races ahead to requisition control, return to sensation, the weight of your tongue, the temperature inside your nostrils, the soft widening behind your eyes. Sensation is the doorway out of the old observer loop. It prevents you from narrating yourself into dispersion. When you are inside sensation, your stories shrink to a workable size, and truth can choose a sentence without having to shout. Let light become a tool, not a metaphor. When you speak with someone, imagine a clear column of light between your sternum and theirs, a two-way instrument that favors honesty and reduces static. You do not use it to convince, you use it to reveal which words belong and which do not. If a conversation pulls you toward old gravity, picture the column dimming and pause. Either the light returns a sign that coherence is possible, or it stays faint, which is your cue to close with kindness. Boundaries held in light do not bruise, they clarify. Your environment is part of integration. Rearrange one small zone to match the rhythm you want multiplied. Your desk, your bedside table, the bag you carry. Remove objects that belong to timelines you are no longer funding. Add one object that reminds your hands who you are now. An instrument, a smooth stone, a card with 3 words that summarize your frequency. Minimalism is not the goal, congruence is. Congruence reduces the cognitive load required to remain accurate when the day gets noisy. Food and water matter because they are how the field becomes you. Eat in ways that keep your breath long and your gaze soft. Hydrate as if you were rinsing the mirror ocean from the vision frequently, gratefully, before thirst argues its case. After meals, sit for 60 seconds and let your system register safety. Digestion inside safety frees attention for discernment. Discernment is how you spend less life force on reactivity and more on creation. Create small rituals for crossings, doorways, phone calls, meetings. Before you enter, breathe once and ask, silently, what is the lowest energy way to tell the most truth here? Let the answer be boring. Boring is a code word for elegant. Elegant actions leave a surplus of clarity behind them. You will start recognizing rooms where clarity accumulates like interest. Those are coherence nodes. Visit them often. Build more of them. When you falter, and you will, because integration respects biology, treat relapse as data, not drama. Track the conditions that made dispersion cheap. Fatigue, social hunger, unstructured time, old music that smuggles in old weather. Adjust the conditions before you adjust the dream. Sleep 1 hour more. Eat earlier. Schedule solitude as if it were oxygen. Send one honest message where a vague one would have cost you 3 follow-ups. Precision is merciful. It gives tomorrow less to untangle. Practice refusal as a sacrament. You are not rejecting people. You are rejecting static. A clean no preserves relationship space for a later honest yes. When guilt rises, remember, guilt is often loyalty to a former self. Thank it for its service and let it retire. You do not owe continuity to the you that funded timelines you can no longer breathe inside. You owe continuity to breath, to the helix bridge that trusted you with its music. Let remembrance anchor the day. Set 3 micro-alarms with no sound, only a vibration or a subtle screen flash. At each, pause and recall the bell tone from the shore. Ask, am I spending attention where lattices grow? If not, reallocate immediately. Do not wait for a better mood. Mood follows allocation more often than allocation follows mood. Service is the natural overflow of integration. Offer your steadiness without advertising it. Hold presence in rooms that forgot they had one. Share resources that reduce static for others. Clear processes, kind sentences, practical timelines. Do not confuse service with rescue. Rescue steals rehearsal time from those learning their own coherence. Your job is to model, to midwife, to maintain signals so accurately that alternatives become obvious. Finally, rehearse gratitude as a physics, not a politeness. Gratitude directs attention toward the scaffolding that already supports your next inevitability. Name 3 specific structures each evening: someone's patience, a narrow miss in traffic, the way a sentence arrived on time. Specificity increases signal to noise. The field loves specifics. They are invitations it can actually accept. This is how the prophecy becomes muscle memory. Breath that keeps promises, light that tells the truth, rooms arranged for accuracy, refusals that bless, yeses that build. You are not chasing transcendence. You are allowing immanence to do its quiet, exact work. Keep the cadence, keep the column, keep the bell, tone near. Integration is nothing more and nothing less than coherence lived long enough to become culture. Begin with less. 1 breath, widening the room. 1 exhale, lowering the floor. You sit inside the bell tone, and the bell tone sits inside you. Let language step back a little. Let sound arrive as weather, not as argument. The hum of electricity through the wall, distant traffic smoothing into a river, the soft metronome of your heart. These are your first teachers. You do not ask them for meaning, you let them mean themselves. Meaning becomes obvious when you stop squeezing it. Feel the edges soften, the outline of your body loosens, then blurs, then becomes a gradient. You are not disappearing, you are blending. Where skin used to insist, space now collaborates. Thoughts still occur, but they pass like quiet animals across a forest path, seen, respected, unchased. The old observer loop looks for a hook. There isn't one. Hooks require friction. You are practicing a surface too smooth for entanglement with noise. Silence here is not empty. It is densely inhabited by unused options. You sense them like constellations behind your eyelids, cool, available, not demanding attention, ready when called. Because you do not call, they rest. Resting possibilities stop taxing your system. Your capacity returns to you like tide. This is conservation of attention, and conservation becomes strength. Notice how memory behaves when you do not grip it. Regrets flatten, then uncrease themselves. Praise loses its sugar rush and becomes simple acknowledgement. Even grief changes texture, no longer a riptide, more like rain on warm stone. You don't have to manage it. You let it darken the surface. Watch it be absorbed. Feel the stone brighter afterward, as if rinsed. The field learns your new policy. Everything is permitted to complete itself without your intervention. Completion generates coherence automatically. In this silence, you begin to hear the small mechanics of safety. The way your belly softens when no one is asking for a performance. The way your jaw remembers its native hinge. The way your eyes finally land instead of scanning. Micro reliefs add up to macro permission. Biology trusts you again. When biology trusts you, it gives you longer windows before fight, flight, or freeze recruit your attention. Inside longer windows, choice enjoys oxygen. The prophecy prefers oxygen. Minimal images arrive. A single candle in a large room, a shore at blue hour, a path of hexagons extending into an unlit grove. You do nothing with them. They are not prompts. They are reassurances from the geometry that raised you. You are on the line. Continue. A sentence forms and dissolves before the second clause. You let it go. The silence is writing itself into you. You don't need to draft over its handwriting. Time changes manners. Minutes dilate, but not the way boredom stretches them thin. They deepen. Each minute contains a few extra rooms. You walk through them without turning on lights. Your feet know where furniture lives. This is intimacy with the quantum field, the kind where you don't knock because the house is yours. Ownership here is not possession, it is belonging. Belonging is the opposite of urgency. Without urgency, accuracy gets to speak first. The world continues outside, alerts stack, obligations queue, narratives try to draft you. You let them pass like weather seen through tempered glass. Not avoidance, discernment. You will re-enter soon enough. Silence is not exile from the human choreography. It is the rehearsal hall where you remember how to move without borrowing steps from panic. When you return, you will carry this tempo into rooms that forgot they had one. But for now, no rehearsal, only listening. Listen to the space between heartbeats. There is a feathered interval there. It carries the seam where timelines touch. It is unremarkable, which is why you have missed it for years. Sit one breath longer, and you can feel the seam widen by a needle's width. That is enough. Through it, the future you met on the Helix Bridge inhales. Through it, the past you feared exhale completes. Through it, the present you receives the exact dosage of instruction it can metabolize without spectacle. You remember a simple instruction from earlier: accuracy over effort. Silence is where accuracy prototypes itself. It trims the sentence before the tongue wastes it. It declines invitations that would have required you to forget. It chooses the smaller, truer action that leaves a clean wake. When doubt knocks, silence doesn't debate. It points. You follow the point. The body nods. The room brightens by a fraction. This is not a trance. It is awake simplicity. The mind is available without being recruiting officer for every stray thought. The heart is open without hemorrhaging. The gut is steady without hardening. Systems agree. Agreement frees wattage. Freed wattage becomes presence. Presence is the currency the field respects most. Let one more breath arrive without your help. Let one more exhale fold the day into a shape that supports rather than scolds. When you stand, do it as if gravity were an ally. When you walk, do it as if the floor were listening. When you speak next, let the first word come from the seam between beats. Keep the silence near, like a small stone in your pocket you do not need to touch to remember. It will accompany you into decisions and into sleep. It will make room for a turn that cannot happen at higher noise. The prophecy prefers this amplitude: soft, exact, unforced. Stay here one breath longer, then rise with nothing extra. You rise from the quiet like a bell answered, and the world hears you before you speak. Activation is not fireworks. It is a change in baseline. Your set point slides from vigilance to coherence and refuses to slide back. What you practiced in stillness begins to act on matter. The column of light between your sternum and the day does not flicker when doors open or close. The braid along your spine hums at a higher harmonic, and biology concedes. Heart rate variability widens, breath lengthens on contact with challenge, muscles choose precision over armor. You are not trying to be calm. You are calibrated. Notice how decisions occur now. They do not debate, they resolve. A request arrives. In the past, you would have outsourced the answer to politeness, pressure, or pattern. Now the body returns a measurement: warmth or drain, widen or narrow, and the sentence forms from that metric. A clean yes, a kind no, a boundary stated without theater. This is not personality improvement, it is physics obeyed. The field prefers minimal energy paths to maximal truth. You have become such a path. The seam between heartbeats you learn to feel in silence begins to open during motion. In that feathered interval, instruction lands. Turn here, wait one day, send the message now, don't explain. You follow without fuss. Results appear with the efficiency of a well-drawn blueprint, right people arriving at right tempo, wrong rooms releasing their hold without litigation. Probability collapses around your accuracy like fabric tailored to the breath. You catch yourself smiling at timing because it behaves like a friend. You have stopped bullying clocks. Entanglement strengthens. The future self from the helix bridge does not visit anymore. It occupies. Cadence becomes character. You walk into rooms as a pressure drop, and the weather inside other bodies changes by proximity. Shoulders lower, speech slows, latent intelligence feels invited. Some will lean in, some will flee. Both are data. You do not chase either outcome. Activation is not recruitment, it is declaration. You declare by frequency what is possible here, and those who are built for it remember themselves. The observer loop has retooled. Stimulus arrives, presence answers, selection happens at the speed of breath, embodiment writes the choice into tissue, your language follows suit. It shortens without losing care. Verbs strengthen, nouns clarify, adjectives retire unless they are necessary for mercy. People call it leadership, you call it less static. Meetings that used to metastasize into hours collapse into 10-minute precisions. Projects stop hemorrhaging attention. Logistics align with values. The invisible city you've been voting for with breath and gaze begins to draft visible streets. Your nervous system now behaves like a phase-locked loop, sensing external frequency, then holding its own rhythm while permitting entrainment where beneficial. This is why panic does not conscript you. You can witness it without subscription. Vagal tone acts like a governor on reactivity. Microtubules in neurons vibrate with a steadier song. Fascia conducts that music as if the body were a single instrument tuned every morning. DNA expression continues its modest renovation. Nothing mystical in the sense of escape, everything mystical in the sense of belonging. You belong to a design that favors coherence, and so coherence favors you. Practice now becomes transmission. You teach without announcing that you are teaching. A teammate watches you refuse an invitation that would have bought applause but cost integrity, and something in them upgrades its courage index. A friend hears you apologize once cleanly, without self-mutilation, and realizes repair does not require humiliation. A stranger meets your eyes for 1 second longer than usual and remembers they have a choice about how fast to move. You are not responsible for their outcomes. You are responsible for the weather you carry. The weather is good, not everything softens. Some patterns intensify as they exit. Old timelines may stage farewell performances, one more seduction of urgency, one more chance to be needed by chaos. You recognize the choreography and do not audition. If grief visits, you give it water, sunlight, a window. It finishes its work and leaves the room cleaner than it found it. If anger arrives, you hand it a task sliced through fog, not through people, and it becomes a sword that never draws blood. Emotions stop being verdicts and return to their real job. Information moving at the speed of truth. Synchrony multiplies. Numbers repeat on clocks not as superstition, but as timing's wink. Messages arrive just before you reach for the phone. A book falls from a shelf, and the sentence you open to is the one you would have written if you had more time. You thank the lattice and keep moving. Gratitude is now a navigation system, not a ritual. It points your feet and edits your calendar, and then a quieter threshold. There is no longer a difference between you activating and the field activating. The distinction dissolves like salt in warm water. You speak, and the room behaves as if the field itself were clarifying its intention. You pause, and the conversation locates its center. You rest, and productivity improves precisely where your absence created room for intelligence. This is the prophecy completing a circuit awareness, remembering it is the medium, not merely the message. You notice the simplest proof. You like who you are in private. No audience, no performance, only the bell tone and the clean wake your day leaves behind it. You fall asleep inside a geometry that will greet you again at dawn. And you know with the kind of certainty that does not need defending that the next step will present itself on time because time enjoys you now. Activation is not a moment you keep chasing. It is a climate you keep. Keep it by breathing like a lighthouse, by refusing the cost of static, by choosing the sentence that spends the least to say the most. Keep it, and the world will keep step. You stand in the afterglow of your own accuracy, a horizon breathing through your chest. Nothing grandiose announces itself, no trumpets, no blinding revelation, only the unmistakable relief of alignment settling into bone. This is how endings behave when they are really beginnings. The room gets simple, the air says yes, and your name fits. The prophecy does not hover above you like weather anymore. It moves as your gait, your gaze, the tempo of your kindness. You have learned to treat breath as governance, attention as currency, language as architecture. You have watched timelines rearrange around coherence without needing to be persuaded. You have learned that refusal can be a blessing, that stillness is bandwidth, that courage is cheaper when entanglement is honest. You have carried light as a tool rather than a performance, and rooms have remembered their centers because you refused to outsource yours. Look back once not to rehearse pain, but to measure distance. The observer loop that once conscripted your days into reaction now bows to a quieter cadence. Stimulus, presence, selection, embodiment. What used to demand explanation now asks only for integrity. You don't beg clocks, you befriend timing. You no longer audition for rooms that cannot afford the frequency you carry. You bless them and keep walking. Look forward once not to bargain with outcomes, but to declare companionship. The field is not a stage you perform on. It is the intimacy arranging itself as your life. It will meet you at the next threshold with the same economy it used here. Fewer contradictions, cleaner logistics, a wideness in the ribs where urgency used to sleep. You will continue to practice the boring elegance that leaves a surplus of clarity behind it. You will continue to vote with breath and gaze for the invisible city becoming visible. You will continue to let grief irrigate roots and let gratitude point your feet. And look here right now where nothing is pending and everything is available. Place one palm over your heart and one over your belly. Let the bell tone fill the room from the inside out. Whisper, not as wish but as witness. I am not separate from the field. I am its living, breathing awareness. Let the sentence settle until it stops sounding like a sentence and starts behaving like oxygen. Feel microcurrents braid along the spine. Feel the cardiac field widen by a small sunrise. Feel the hexagons under your feet find their places. This is the seal. You do not need to remember these words to remember their work. The work is already in your tissues, rehearsed in your mornings, smuggled into your syntax. You will forget and remember and forget and remember, and each cycle will cost you less because forgetting no longer exiles you. It invites another round of accuracy. The future does not require spectacle from you. It requires fidelity. So step across this threshold with nothing extra. Speak as if truth were affordable. Rest as if presence were maintenance. Spend attention where lattices grow. Let your refusals be gentle and unarguable. Let your yes be plain and generative. Let your life be the quiet proof that prophecy is not a headline but a habit. Hear the final line rise through you, not as command but as confirmation. The prophecy has been spoken. Let it unfold through you.